All right, and we're recording. All right, Alfred, good morning, good afternoon.
Good
It
morning,
is,
Reagan. Nice to see you again.
yeah, it's wonderful to see you too. So, you have done a lot in this space since your entrance in 2017. I think that you have really made a splash into the Cardano ecosystem. And
I was throwing at least a couple of pebbles, so I don't know if it was a splash, but
well, I mean, you have Hotel Cardano. Like Hotel Ginebra is
sure.
Hotel Cardano. So that's
Mhm.
I'd say that's a little more than a pebble.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a hotel, so it was like a convenient asset. And I mean, yeah, at some point we asked ourselves, what can we do for the community? And there was this big building looming in front of us, so we thought, hey, why not convert it into a Cardano hotel? So yeah, it's kind of obvious, in a way.
Well, I mean, I don't know of too many people that would be brave enough to do that. But even even outside of the hotel, you run your own stake pool.
Mm.
You do the hotel podcast.
Mm.
And few don't know this, but many years ago, I want you to talk more about this because I think this would be a fun topic.
Sure.
Talk to me about the hotel net service.
Oh, really? Hotel net service. That's a long time ago. Going down memory lane. Well, this was about 2002, I think, if I can remember correctly. And I was part of a group of hotels in Rome at the time, and it was the very very early start of the internet. And at some point, a friend of mine, a Brazilian guy, he contacted somebody we'd met in Rome previously and who had moved back to Brazil. He contacted me and he said, "Hey, you ought to make a, a page for for your hotel on the internet." It's like, "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" So anyway, he first made a page for our hotel, and then one thing led to the other, and then at some point we thought, "Oh, it might be an idea to actually make a hotel reservation service, like Booking.com and others." At the time, I don't think Booking.com even existed because we took inspiration from another system that was called Venere, actually based out of Rome also, and then who got later bought up by another one of the big guys. But yeah, we just the two of us, we created a hotel reservation system. I gave all the input from a hotel owner point of view, and working like 2 o'clock at night with big cables running through my living room because there was no Wi-Fi. So this was the way how we used to connect to the internet. And my friend who likes to be anonymous is an awesome programmer and also like a hacker programmer, whatever you want to call it. And he was able to just create something on the fly almost. Like I would tell him to do things, and I would then see them materialize in front of me. So we actually did that, and before we knew it, we had a hotel reservation system called Hotel Net Service, and it went really well. We also made a system whereby people could sign themselves up, which at the time was quite revolutionary. And I remember certain days where we would get like 60 or 70 hotels just joining. And but after 2 years, we had to give it up. My friend had some family issues. It was difficult for me also to maintain the rhythm of looking after our expanding business in Rome at the time. And after 2 years, we had to throw in the towel. But for 2 years, we actually had a hotel reservation service that did quite well. So
Well, that's impressive. Think of a booking.com prior to booking.com.
it was, yeah. And it was kind of funny also because in that process, then at some point I got to know the guys who then created Booking.com, who were actually a couple of Dutch guys, and they told me the story about how they were camping and they made a reservation on camping. Because at the time, without any internet, people used to walk around with their "Let's Go" guys, Let's Go Europe or what have you, or the equivalent for other continents, and make phone calls and maybe meet people at railway stations. So
Oh yeah, I
at some
remember those days.
yeah, exactly. And actually, this is something that I've done also because I've also in my younger years have been a runner on the railway station in Rome, and
What?
yes, approaching approaching people when they came off the trains,
Uh-huh.
and because this is how I ended up in Italy. First of all, after I moved from Holland, I got to know a guy, a campsite owner in Holland, and spent winter with him. And I decided I liked to hang out with Italians. I was fascinated with the language. And then March came. He said, "Why don't you come with me to Italy, and you can work a couple of seasons on my campsite?" And I was a little bit, a little bit lost what I was doing in university. Wasn't taken very, very seriously. So I went, worked on the campsite for a couple of years as a bartender and all kinds of stuff. And then at some point, the guys that were doing the running on the station, as they called it, they quit. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. I spoke a couple of languages. So I've done that for a couple of years. And that's actually the start of how I got into the hotel business. Because one thing led to another. I was bringing people to campsites by approaching them, giving them like leaflets, putting them on the bus, And but
Holy
at the same
moly.
time, yeah, it's like a whole different universe without internet. But at the same time, there were also people that were doing the same for hotels. And for the campsite, we were getting like a small amount because we had to send like huge amounts of people, maybe like 50, 60, 70 a day, as they came off the train, with the little backpacks and the tent on their backs, like turtles.
They're pretty easy to spot.
They were very easy to spot, yes. But at the same time, there was also like this organized bunch of people that were doing the same for hotels. And their commission structure was very different. They were getting 20%. Imagine, this is previous to internet, like previous to hotel reservation systems. So they would approach people as they came off the train, suggest a hotel, and then walk them to the hotel. And then they would also get like 20% commission on all the nights that these people would stay. So at some point, I started
That's a
getting
good
good at
gig.
what I was doing for the campsite. So then I got approached for by some hotels, doing the same thing for them. And then the ball started rolling. And then at some point, I joined some hotels, then bought into a couple of them. And well, that's how the whole thing started. So
That's awesome.
mm,
I love that story. I know that whenever I was interviewing you with Cardano Times, you briefly mentioned that, like the hotel net service, and then
mhm.
you alluded to some interesting past prior to Hotel Ginebra. And so I've been curious about that story for probably a couple years now, since I'd say
Mhm.
since 2020, whenever I first started up Cardano
Sure.
Times. And so I was going back and rereading that interview, and I'm so glad you put that in there.
Yeah, it's funny how fast time passes by, right? So,
Oh
and
my
thank you for the
goodness.
opportunity of sharing that because it's a big part of my life. This is how everything we are now sort of started in those moments. So nothing was planned. It was just like a ball rolling down the hill. So
Yeah. I mean,
mm,
that's what's that old saying? If you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans.
sure.
And so
Yeah.
nobody ever knows what life is going to throw at them. Nobody ever knows. Like, we all have
Totally.
plans, we all have ideas, but nobody ever
Mhm.
knows what's truly going to happen in life.
Totally unpredictable. And it wasn't the easiest way of doing things because I mean I didn't go to educate myself on, didn't go to any, you know, university specific to how to run a hotel or whatever. But we did it the hard way, and but we still made it. And now we have this lovely little place on the central square of Barcelona and Cardano Hotel. So could not have wished for anything better.
Yeah. And how did you end up starting that hotel? So I mean, that, like, yeah, being a runner and everything is how you ended up in the hotel business as a
Mhm.
whole. But I was really just kind of curious as to how you, number one, how you ended up settling in on Hotel Ginebra
Mhm.
in Barcelona there,
Sure.
and then also all the different. I'm sure you've had some unique people swing by outside of Charles.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can tell you how that happened. Very brief recap. So by 2002, like we got invited, me and my then girlfriend Yvonne, because she studied business. So we got invited by my friends who had a hotel in Rome. We were actually about to go and live in Australia because that's where my then girlfriend had lived for many years. But we got a call one day and said, "Hey, you want to come and join the hotels because we're expanding?" So we got on the plane to Rome. We checked it out and decided to Australia out of the window, and we were going to make it in Rome. So joined this company. The company grew for several years. This was actually 1996. And we were at the same company, I think, until 2002, until we fell out with them. By then, we had like 4 hotels and like a small empire, of which we had a small part. But then, we decided it was time to go. So we started our own little business in Rome. And that consisted of bed and breakfast and apartments and scattered all over the place, which was hard because in many different locations. And I had to check people in a lot of the times. So I was going around on a scooter like a maniac, without a helmet, driving through the streets of Rome, and also like sometimes at night, waiting for people to check in like at midnight. And so anyway, this went on until 2012. And after the financial crisis of 2008, things that started going downhill a little bit in the hotel business in Rome, and because everybody was trying to create a living for themselves by opening like a bed and breakfast or whatever. Many Italians are homeowners, and the average price was going down and down and down. So at some point we thought, well, if this continues, we're going to be here and we'll be working to pay the rent. So what are we going to do? And we had a son who was then 12. So it was the time in your life where you decide either you're going to continue down the same path or you have to make a change. And obviously, it's important to have to be able to make a living with what you do, no matter how much you like it, or no matter that you live in a beautiful city, which is like an open air museum called Rome. Mm-hmm. So we left. We decided, okay, let's go. And we didn't know where to go. So we spoke to some people that came through our guest house and said, where are you going and where have you been? And then to my surprise, many people said Barcelona. So we said, okay, Barcelona, didn't expect that. We were thinking like Berlin, Paris, London. So Barcelona. So we got on a plane. We went here like 3 times, checked it out. And the conditions seemed to be favorable. So we sold up everything we had and we went to Barcelona. And we gave ourselves 6 months to find a new business.
That's super ballsy.
Well, it could have gone wrong easily because 1 week before time was up, where we were looking at each other because we had no income, and we were eating up all our savings from whatever we'd saved, 3 years. And you can only do that so long, as we've learned in COVID. Suddenly, when your income dries up, then your bank account starts going down really, really fast.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So then 1 week before we saw this, we were getting a little bit desperate. We said, okay, what are we going to do now? Maybe move back to Holland or England in the cold and the rain, because we like living in the Mediterranean. And then we'd seen this one last ad that we decided to give a shot, which was talking about a hotel on the central square of Barcelona. And we thought, yeah, sure. It's going to be another dump like we'd seen many of them, And it turned out to be amazing. And so we took it, and it's on the main square of Barcelona. Then to answer your question about meeting all kinds of special people, what we had learned in the time that we were running all these small accommodations in Rome to be competitive, we had to stand out a little bit. So we made it very personable. So one of the things that we always used to do, and I was also on reception a lot of the times because we didn't have a lot of staff, as people would come through the door, I would ask them, I wouldn't say, hey, can I see your reservation? And here's your key and blah, blah. I would say, hi, nice to meet you. Who are you? And why are you here? And, and then conversation would start, And
that's just something unique.
Yeah, it was unique, and people apparently like to share their story. They didn't expect it. So as we then moved to Barcelona after we'd set up the hotel, we still maintained that same concept for several years. And all you have to do is ask, because in fact, some of the people that come through your hotel are absolutely amazing, and you wouldn't know unless you ask. So, like many examples, but I don't want to, bore you with all the people that came through, but it really is amazing. And this is kind of the kind of place that we created, it's very personal, and that's, in that sense, I think it's also very suitable to be like a Cardano hub, because it's meant to be very welcoming. So that's kind of the backstory.
And you're in the city center, and so
right on the center. The peculiar thing about Barcelona is that the most important landmark, which is Plaza Catalunya, is like the main square. It's also located exactly in the middle of the city. So yeah, that's very, very peculiar. Not necessarily the case, right? Or
Mhm.
hardly ever the case, because they had the old city, Barcelona was originally a fishing town. So it went up from the beach and then upwards, towards the mountains behind Barcelona.
Mhm.
And then at some point, they had the square, and then they decided, okay, we need to expand the city. So then they built what is called the expansion. In Spanish, has a different name, obviously, La Eixample, behind it. So as a result, the square is exactly in the middle between the old city on the one side, with the beach and the sea, the old city, and on the other side you have the new part of the city, which is called the extension. So again, it's kind of magical because the hotel is located on the corner of the most central point of the whole city. So you cannot help but pass by when you're here, So
Right. And that's incredible. It's such a good location.
mhm.
Mostly a tourist town, I would guess. Um, I mean, like obviously, uh, Barcelona is a big city. So I mean, but it's also really touristy. I would assume as well. I've never truly been there.
Mhm.
However, I would guess that COVID played a tremendous role in Barcelona, just as it did in everywhere. So can you talk to some of the struggles that were going on in the hotel during COVID?
Yeah, I still remember how COVID started because obviously it was first in China, and we were all still thinking, okay, they have an issue there, but they'll probably sort it out. And then it arrived in Italy. I remember in the north of Italy, and then we're all looking at each other like, that's not so good. And then it started dawning on us that this might spread. There was no stopping it. And sure enough, before you knew it, then there was a soccer match, which I remember in Atalanta, the team called Atalanta from a city called Bergamo, and they played in Valencia because even the governments, they were still unsure about whether we can stop this, what's happening. So I remember this football game going on, and there was like 10,000 supporters of Atalanta that went to support their team in Valencia, and that's how I think it came very quickly in Valencia, and then boom, it went all around Spain. And then we were like, okay, I think we have to shut down the hotel. And even in the beginning stage, as we were in the process of doing it, we had people that couldn't get out, for example, because they suddenly there was no flights and everything was shutting down. So it was crazy. So we had a bunch of people that were camping out basically in the hotel. We said, okay, you can stay for free. And it took them like a week, to sort out the stuff with the embassies and get emergency flights and what have you. And then in the end, we were closed the hotel was closed down for 1 year and 3 months, in
My
which we had
goodness.
zero income. And yeah, and we would have gone broke if it hadn't been for one remarkable fact. Because we were lucky enough to have bought some ADA when it was cheap
Mhm.
in 2017. We had a considerable amount of ADA then, and we
So it went up
it went
in
up
in
exactly at the right
2020.
time. Exactly at the right time. So basically, we maintained ourselves for more than a year by selling big bunches of ADA that we had, and that's how we saved the hotel.
I
So
mean, you
yeah,
have to do what you have to do in that
you have to do what you have
instance.
to do. But it's kind of nice in a way because us taking interest, being the first business in the world to accept ADA as payment, and then later it came back to us 3 years later, and then Cardano actually saved the hotel. So yeah, it's kind of magical, in a way. But it wasn't funny.
No, that it's not funny. I mean, looking back at it, I'm sure you can think on specific days where you're thinking we're gonna have to close, or
No,
we're
no. I
gonna
mean, the closing process went really fast. Also, because at some point it was also like a decision made on government level, right? So they said, okay,
true.
now you're closing. This category is closing. Hotels, bars, any place where a lot of people would be gathering. They tried to keep the hotels open as long as possible, also because people have reservations, different processes. But at some point, it was just clear that there was no saving it. So
Yeah.
I think it was March 22nd of 2020 that we had to close, and we didn't reopen for like another year and 3 months. So yeah, that was fun.
But what a beautiful story as to how you're starting this up, and you're wanting to do something good for Cardano, and then eventually Cardano comes full circle back around to
Mhm.
your hotel.
That's
It's tr
that's correct. Yeah, and then during the pandemic, after we realized that we were going to make it, probably going to make it by by selling off our ADA. That's also one of the moments when I thought, okay, maybe we should really go all the way and turn it into a Cardano hotel. So and now
so is
when you
that
walk through the hotel, there's decoration everywhere, and the numbers of the rooms have Cardano logos on them. And whereas a lot of people have been here, obviously most people have not been here yet, but it's worth a visit. So.
Oh, whenever me and my wife, whenever we go over to Europe, Barcelona will be on the list,
Mhm.
and we'll be swinging by the hotel for sure.
Mhm.
And so I encourage anyone, if you want to support Alfred, swing by Barcelona and stop off at the Cardano Hotel
Mhm.
Ginebra,
Yeah, and even if it's not a staying hotel, because I mean it's only a small hotel, not everybody can stay here.
right?
But also when you're staying anywhere else, just pass by and come and say hi, and grab a coffee, and it's always a pleasure to meet people.
Yeah, it's. I mean, whenever let's transition slightly
Sure.
to whenever you met Charles,
Hmm.
and then whenever Charles also stayed at the hotel,
Well,
or at least visited the hotel.
but he hasn't.
He
He hasn't
hasn't. I thought
visited.
he did.
No, he hasn't yet. Um,
Oh,
I know.
I thought he swung by. I thought I
Well,
remembered that from like 2018. I
no.
think 2019.
What happened is that after we decided to become the first hotel to accept ADA, we were invited to a workshop of IOHK in the end of January of 2018, and that's where we met Charles, and we went for dinner together and had a wonderful evening. Charles gave me a private lesson on blockchain for 2 hours, and it was super cool. But no, Charles has not been able to visit yet. I know he was in Barcelona quite recently, but I think his schedule didn't allow him. So
Uh,
there was a bit of a bummer, but we're hoping to see him soon, though. So.
yeah, that's oh man, I don't know how I got that so confused.
No, because he's been in Barcelona, and obviously, posting pictures or visiting the Sagrada Familia and whatever. There was talks about him coming.
Mhm.
I was also contacted by somebody internally to say that he should be coming, but then something interfered. Busy schedule, and probably didn't make it. So, but anyway,
Mhm.
we just met again very recently in Lausanne. Finally, we were able to give each other a great hug, and yeah, it was very very good to, because I mean, communicating on Twitter or social media is just not the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, even if you're just in the same room with somebody for like a couple of minutes, it transmits so much more than just all this social media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's. I mean, I know it was completely different whenever I went to Rare Bloom. That was the first big meetup that I'd ever gone to, first event,
yeah,
and it was so different interacting with people. And I mean, just, and I will say this about the Cardano community: they are genuine people.
yeah.
And whenever, have you ever gone to one of the events anywhere like
I did
like
actually. I went to because of my recent involvement with an NFT platform. I've actually been to Vegas recently to see NFTCon, and that was also amazing.
Oh,
It was
that's right.
just
You
one.
you were there. I remember seeing some pictures of you, and I remember regretting that because I had to choose just because of my schedule. I had to choose CNFT Con or Rare Bloom, and so
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
regret
think
missing
we,
you then.
we spoke to each other about it. So yeah, I went there. It was awesome. Went with a couple of other people, Cole and Raj from Sustainable ADA, and we were on the same team and met tons of other people. It's like a family reunion, but also just to see all this creativity. It was like crazy, like hundreds of or more than 100 projects and what have you. And then we've also just been to Lausanne, actually, to the Cardano Summit, and really, really also enjoyed it. I mean, level of professionalism was amazing, was outstanding. I mean, from the very moment you came through the door and you left your coat at the wardrobe on day one until the last goodbye party. It was perfectly organized. I mean, I could not make the Cardano Foundation a bigger compliment, and I'm really, really happy they pulled it off, because it also kind of symbolized, which was also emphasized by Charles in his keynote speech at the end of the event. It kind of represented kind of a reversal of roles, if you will. In my perspective, it really puts the foundation now at the center of the ecosystem. And IOHK, they've always been the ones pulling the cart, right? On the technological level, on the marketing level, with Charles doing all his AMAs. But in the end, it's an ecosystem that's made up of people all over the planet, and it's called Cardano. It's not called IOHK or IOG, right?
Right.
So super impressive. Met the most wonderful people. Again, also had the opportunity to just say hi again to Charles, finally after 4 years. And his inner circle, of which I know quite a few people. And it was amazing. It blew us away. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and to your point there about IOG, I've seen a pivot from them to where they are becoming more and more of an engineering company, kind of their original mandate of just being contracted to work on Cardano. And I love seeing that. I love seeing them gradually take small steps backwards and saying, here, you guys take control, whether it's to the Cardano Foundation or to the community as a whole. And I love that. I love that you brought that up as well.
Totally, and it also really puts the role of Charles in perspective, right? Because I mean, he's been getting attacked a lot on social media by people that say they represent other ecosystems. I actually believe that perhaps they don't. I think maybe it's just somebody out there, some occult power, paying people to troll the Cardano ecosystem. But I mean, somebody had to start it up, right? And it was his project. He was the inventor of the whole concept. So yeah, I mean, he put his weight behind it, and you can only applaud that. And now it's in fact great to see that they're coming through, because now they're delivering on the promise of slowly stepping back after they've passed it and started up the ecosystem. So yeah, other than a couple people really have no clue what they're talking about, So let's not even go there.
Yeah. Keeping it around Cardano, I was just having this conversation with, I think it was Cardano over coffee, and we were talking about risk. And it is so less risky right now to invest into ADA than it was in 2017, 2018, whenever all of us were in the Cardano forum. We're all on Daedalus, the good old days. And the community was much, much smaller. And I just look at Cardano now and all of the things that we have just 4 years later. And almost 5 years since I've been invested. And I scroll out and I think, okay, where are we going in the next 4 years or 5 years? And I have my own viewpoint on it, and I'd really like to hear your viewpoint as to if we look at Cardano 2026, 2027, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. To illustrate that, also might be interesting to bring up a couple of points from the past. For example, the fact that when we invested in ADA and started that we liked Cardano, must have been August of 2017 that we first discovered Cardano. It was a hunch. That was all it was, Then there was another moment in time which I thought was significant, because I had also the pleasure of interviewing Charles, I think maybe 2 years ago. And during that interview, it's still on the podcast channel. Sometimes I see fragments of it, and about how the ecosystem is growing. And he was saying, "Yeah, now we are a few 100,000 people. Move forward to 2022, and I think now we're approaching 4 million wallets, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, some people might have more than one wallet, but still, it's
a couple million people.
There's probably a couple of million people, I mean, that's just amazing. That's just mind-blowing, exponential growth. So where will we be in 2025? For me, it's more of a question of where would I can't predict it, because I'm not nobody has a crystal ball. I'm hoping and presuming that developments will keep becoming easier and easier, so that more people will want to program on Cardano, because it's a software platform and it has to be accessible. At the same time, also, I think we shouldn't forget that the real main mission of Cardano was to bring new tools, new financial or also technological tools to Africa, and that's always been the promised land, So I would really hope that by 25, 26, there would be like a thriving ecosystem of the type that now mostly exists in Europe and the Americas and Asia, that it wouldn't have come to fruition, and also in Africa, and then maybe then when you visit Addis Ababa, that you can pay for your coffee in the Ada, or or all kinds of programs are around you, and that's what I would hope for. I can't predict it, but that's what I would love to see happening.
Or maybe in like a Ethiopian stable coin on a sidechain.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
as long as it's powered by Cardano, that's really the main thing there.
Totally.
I would love to see an Ethiopian sidechain. I would love to see all of these different countries have their own sidechains with their own stable coins, and let them set up their own regulations around what interactions happen in their own little bubble, because they are sovereign countries. They have the right to do that.
That's right. I mean, anybody, any country or any entity can take the technology and use it to their own means and imagination, right? So hopefully it'll be used only for good. Otherwise, we'll just kick them out. But
we can't kick them out.
we'll find a way to kick them out. Don't worry about it.
It's like saying we're going to kick them off the internet. You can't do that. Like the internet's the internet's a free thing. You can't kick them out.
We'll get on a plane and we'll find them. So whatever.
Just bully them. No, I mean, if a country wants to be a dictator, then they're going to be a dictator. If they want to be benevolent, they're going to be benevolent. But either way, the blockchain just says, okay, here we are. We're going to make everything open. We're going to make everything public. We're going to make, unless they're using midnight, of which, I mean, some countries might want to. They might want to set up a sidechain using midnight to where they truly believe in their people's privacy. And in that case, good for them. Some people might want to add a sidechain of a sidechain to where they implement features of midnight in certain things like medical records, or whether that's like company documents or what have you. But I think that we're going in a really, really good direction. And whenever we combine our, well, not our, but I would say like John O'Connor and the Africa team, whenever we combine their efforts in Africa with something like Marlowe and Midnight and World Mobile and anyone else that's getting involved in Africa, I think that we have a really, really good foothold as a Cardano ecosystem, not any one company in particular. But I think that it shows our efforts there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also in a privileged position because some people might know, also interview people on a little podcast. Shout out to ourselves. It's called the Cardano Hotel Podcast. And what we do is we interview people that are building new projects on the Cardano blockchain. So I'm in a privileged position that often people are now contacting me and say, "Did you know that these people are building such and such?" And not yet famous in the community. So often we're the first ones to hear about it, and it really gives you like this incredible impression of how broad the ecosystem is becoming. Just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, interviewed a guy called Simon Salström, a young Oxford graduate, and he's now also setting up a company. I cannot remember the exact name, but it's like a foundation. I think Developed Ed or something like this, whereby they trying to link the surplus of highly qualified or qualifiable students in Africa with the fact that now there'll be a great shortage of IT technicians in Europe and in the US. And I mean, so just connect the two, right? And the blockchain is providing the perfect means to do this. Just one example of many initiatives that people are taking to try and make a difference, you know. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. What has been one of the biggest changes that you've seen in the community? Whenever we look around at the type of people that were investing in 2018 to some of the projects that you've been involved with today or have been over the last year or two, and we just look at the different, well, honestly, like the different types of people, whether they were more of engineering type people or speculators or risk takers or uh, what have you, to now the projects that you've talked to.
Well, I think that the fact that now we're able to talk to so many projects is because the technology is allowing it, you know, because the frustration, as we all know, has been sometimes that the development of the technology of the Cardano blockchain has been slow because it has been very rigorous, you know, with all its peer review and all of that. But now that the technology allows for many different types of projects to be built, also now you are seeing a diversity in projects. Because before, I mean, all you were able to do is like send ADA as a value up and down, right? Now people are building the craziest stuff: foundations, metaverses, music platforms, you name it. And it's the pyramid. It's like an upside down pyramid where it's from the base down. It's just widening and widening and widening, and it just keeps diversifying in any imaginable direction. Again, I mean, I was just looking back at the playlist of the videos of the people that we interviewed since maybe a year and a half, 2 years. We've actually interviewed close to 100 projects.
Oh my
So
goodness.
if anybody wants to know for themselves, I mean, go and check out the Cardano Hotel podcast. You don't have to watch every single episode. Just scroll down the list. No, I mean, just scroll down the list and look at the names of all the projects that we actually met, and it makes you realize that, like, what type of diversity there now is, you know. And I think all the speculators and all the pump and dump guys, they're long gone, you know. So I mean, good luck to them, and you know, nothing against that if you want to make a quick buck with crypto. But Cardano is just not the place to be, as we all know.
You know what? How crazy is it that, again, pivoting slightly, because I'm going to take something you said there and roll with it. How crazy is it that Cardano has been fortunate enough to where we kept complaining about how Gemini didn't list ADA and how FTX didn't list ADA, and then
You know,
how all of these guys haven't listed ADA. We're like, come on, like why are you
I
showing
know,
so much high preference?
I know.
And then now we look at, we go, we're good. Thanks, guys.
It's true, and it's in a way it's one of the lessons to be learned, right? When you're it's probably more like a lesson of life, even, you know, that you can't force things into being, you know. And in a way, it's like if they're meant to be, they'll probably happen. So just go with the flow. I know it sounds very philosophical, but I also do have a Buddha on my desk. So
Hey, there you go.
not because I'm like a convinced Buddhist, but it's more about that sense of, you know, spirituality, which probably also translates into any part of life, you know. And you just cannot always force the outcome that you would like to happen. So sometimes you just have to sit back, and if it happens, it's probably for a reason, and if not, the same, you know. So, and yeah, I mean, we did get pretty lucky there. So,
Going back, you mentioned the Buddha, and that reminded me, and you talked about spirituality, and we were just talking about the Cardano Hotel podcast. Did you ever get a chance to interview Vassal before his passing,
yeah,
or at
touchy
least like
subject.
talk to him?
Well, yes, on more than one occasion. Vasil contacted me, and this must have been let me see, the pandemic was 2020. It's probably December 2019. And out of the blue, Vasil knew about me somehow. Maybe I was doing some podcast or whatever, or he was interested in me as a person, you know, for whatever reason. And he contacted me and he said, "Hey, I'm Vasil," and so and so. So we got to meet. I got to talk to each other a little bit on social media. And at some point he said, you should come to Bulgaria. So I said, all right. And so I went, and this was January of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, just previous to the pandemic. So lucky enough,
Oh wow.
made it just on time. So I spent 4 or 5 days with Basil in Plovdiv, which is an amazing city, beautiful. I mean, I can highly recommend a visit. And yeah, so we became friends. And then last year, 2021, we also organized a support event of the Cardano Summit, the Gauguin Summit, here in the hotel. And Basil wanted to come because, as you know, Basil has planted more than
Alfred,
10,000 trees.
You cut out for just
Yeah, he's planted.
a sec.
Sorry.
Oh, I said I think the connection was getting bad there for just a second. So last I clearly heard is that Vasil wanted to come.
Yes, he said I'd love to come, but he had some health issues previous to that, so he wasn't sure. It's really, I mean, it's a story that's it's kind of a hard story to tell, but at the same time, it tells you a lot about who Vasil was, you know, as a person. So he'd had a pulmonary, very serious issue like several months before, I think half a year before, and he'd been in hospital and what have you. But then there was the sport event to the summit here in Barcelona, and he really wanted to come. And you know that Vasil has planted more than 10,000 trees in his life, and one of them are like ginkgo trees. He said, "No, I have to come, but I don't know if I can because his doctors had told him you cannot take a plane because of the pressure for his lungs." So he got on the bus with 2 bags full of ginkgo trees. And he traveled all the way from Plovdiv to Barcelona on a bus, which took him like 3 nights and 2 days. So literally, unfortunately, as we later found out, with risk to his own life. Because as we know, then 3 months later, Vasil passed away. But yeah, it was great because he was here, and Stoyan was with him, his son. We had the pleasure of hanging out. Vasil was in my house, and yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, we were actually good friends. But yeah, life is what it is, you know. So.
And I mean, I just know that the small interaction that I had with him. Am I cutting out again, or am I good on your side?
You're good.
Computer is active. The small through
breaking up.
Times. Oh, here, let me. This computer, man. Here, let me. If I try and do too much on this computer at all, it just freaks out.
Now you're good again.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what's going on.
Little cosmic interference.
Yeah. Yeah, I just know that the small interaction that I had with Vasil on Cardano Times, just doing even a written interview, he was so funny. Because like I would ask him like, oh gosh, what was something that, so like I would ask him like, the mark of a great man is to plant trees of which in the shade you may never sit in. And
yes,
I said, exactly. So what's some, like, with these trees being so like slow growing or taking so long to live, how do you want to be remembered in that way? Like, what do you want to think about your trees? And he goes, well, the trees aren't slow growing. And so like he takes the whole context out, and he was just like, no, like, let's talk about the trees. The trees are not slow growing.
That's right. Yes, there's another famous quote by Vasil that somebody asked. He's also in a conversation with somebody. He told the story. He said, "I've planted so many trees in my life that at some point I decided I should count the trees, you know, that are all around Plovdiv area." He said, until one day I realized that by counting my trees, I was wasting time. Instead, I could be planting more trees.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah,
He was such a beautiful mind, such a beautiful person to have in this
yeah,
space.
yeah.
Um, and something else that he said that has always stuck around with me, even whenever I'm going on hikes or walks with my family or what have you, is um, art. No, nature is living art,
Mhm.
and he viewed everything outside in such a beautiful way, of it just being living art. And I think that to a great extent, that's kind of what drove him into the Cardano ecosystem, is that it's very nature friendly, and the artistic work behind it. And I love what Veritri is doing. I think
Mhm.
Vassal would love that as well, verifying the amount of trees that are on the network.
Yeah,
And
completely. I actually had the fortune to run into Duncan of Veritree at the CNFT Con. You know, we've also personally connected for the first time, and yeah, in my opinion, it's still one of the greatest projects on the Cardano blockchain for sure.
yeah, they're doing such good work. And shout out to them. If you guys are listening, keep
Mhm.
it up, guys. You're doing great.
Mhm.
Um, so Alfred, can you talk about some of the other projects that you've been involved with over the years here? I know, like, you've been involved with, we're just going to change topics because otherwise we're going to get too
So,
sappy with Vassal.
yeah.
uh uh and can you talk about some of the other projects that you've worked with? I know that I met up with some of the guys from Mad, and they were in the Cardano ecosystem for a while,
Yeah, that's right.
and you spoke to them, and might have been involved with them for a little bit. And
Correct.
I know that
Mhm.
you recently parted ways from another project, but can you speak to some of the different projects that you've worked with, and uh, some of the some of the good, bad, and ugly of the challenges and the benefits that they've come across using Cardano?
Oof, that's kind of a very broad question to
I
answer.
mean, just take it however you want it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think kind of inevitably, you at some point you get exposed to the whole NFT, let's say, call it an industry, right? At the moment, and in my case, it was probably a bit of a distraction because I'm not really artistically inclined. But I think because people knew me from the Cardano Hotel, at some point, people started, sending me drawings and say, "Oh, this could be an NFT." And before I knew it, I was with a couple of guys and we created a platform, but without any thinking about it, And as a matter of fact, it went horribly wrong. Also, it is maybe like a month and a half ago. It was nice, but I realized it wasn't really for me. This is something that I should look onto from the outside, and so that was really my, apart from the stake pool and the Cardano Hotel. I think that was my only other projects that I was involved in. Don't want to go into too much detail. And I mean, NFTs are great. I love the art behind it. What was actually really cool was that while I was involved in this in the platform, it opened doors for me in the artist community here in Barcelona. So suddenly I had people walk into the hotel and say, "Hey, I've heard about you. You're doing NFTs, and I'm an artist." And so that was awesome. That was really great. And I got
Such a
invited.
small world.
No, no, I know. And this is again what we touched on before. Is as long as things are on social media, it's kind of interesting up to a point. But then when you start meeting people in real life, you realize that this is why you're doing it in the first place. So, so yeah, that's what it gave me. It gave me like an like a connection into the artist world here in Barcelona. I think now I've made like 10 or 15 people that are artists here that are now personal friends of mine. So what more can you wish for? And I think that's again maybe the magic, of being involved in a project like Cardano. Maybe also other blockchains, but I mean Cardano always, in my imagination, always stands out at this place where beautiful people meet. That's kind of why I'm here. And at the moment, there's one other project looking into, and a good friend of mine called Carl Henry. who's also helped several other projects. He's been in contact previously with IOSK and Coty, with other endeavors, and he's creating what's called a Cardanoverse. And it's like another metaverse. It's Cardanoverse.app. Basically, it's another metaverse created on the Unreal Engine. And then the idea is that it represents people and projects and entities that are part of the Cardano ecosystem. So it's not so much a metaverse on Cardano as it's a metaverse about Cardano. And that's kind of cool because it really links up to what we're doing on the podcast, right? Which is introducing people and projects that are building in the ecosystem. So yeah, we're kind of we're getting to know each other, and yeah, some good things might happen. There's talks about creating like a virtual version of the Cardano Hotel in the Cardanoverse. So
That'd be cool.
yeah, that'd be very cool. I can't wait to see that happen. And just as a place where projects can gather and where they can, enter and be part of, maybe set up shop, inside this Cardanoverse if it comes off as intended, which I think it is, because yeah, there seems very serious people behind it. So again, it's like a home, like a metaverse home for the Cardano community. So that's the latest. So and other than that, looking forward to the Christmas holidays.
Yeah, I mean we'll just touch on a couple different things and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
You've obviously seen technology change quite a bit in your lifetime.
No shit.
So yeah, I don't know when you were born or anything, but
63.
Oh, 63. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're alive for the moon landing, for color television really becoming popular, for
Absolutely.
The home telephone developments and how those became more and more
Yep.
mainstream, and then
Totally.
development around those cell phones, to now we have spacecraft landing themselves. We have a planet entirely inhabited by robots in Mars. we have
Yeah.
like we have
That's
we
a way
have
of
all
looking at it.
yeah, like we have all sorts of craziness that's happening in the future of like stem cell research, the future of blockchain technology, the future of the metaverse, and how do you view the way that technology has progressed and where it's progressing? Like, is that mostly positive? Is that a mixed bag? Is that like what are your feelings around that?
Yeah, mixed bag of feelings. Just to give a little bit of context, when I was when I grew up, I mean, we had black and white televisions. Then I remember another moment in life that I remember distinctly is when my father came home with the first remote control of the television, because previously you had to walk up to the television and go click to change the channel.
And there's only
And
like 4 channels.
Yeah, there was like 3 channels, and then with like these huge big buttons, you had to press in, and you would never know if they would pop out again of the television, or if they would get stuck. And then suddenly you could sit on your sofa and make the channel. It was like, wow, unbelievable. And yeah, then another moment in life which I remember distinctly, that I was telling you about previously, when the internet came, and the internet connection in my house, it was like cables that are about this thick running through my living room, to be able to work at night. And then yeah, now here we are, right? Metaverse, colonization of Mars, etc. AI. It really depends on us, and I think more than anything else, this is super important. Why there's people that are promoting things like blockchain for transparency, etc. I did another interview the other day where just trying to remember the project for a second. Okay, I can't remember which project it was, but anyway, talking about the creation of AI, right? Okay, I remember. I was interviewing the guys from Enter the Mandela. I don't know if you know the project. If you don't, check it out. It's amazing.
How do you spell it?
Enter the Mandala. Enter the Mandala. And it's created by Kevin Fox, which was the executive director of the Blair Witch Project, which was also a very interesting movie because that's the first one that created a connection between, as we're talking about changes, right? This was the Blair Witch Project, was one of the first movies that created a connectivity between movies and the internet, where people would be able to interact with movies by means of the internet. So anyway, talking with him also about the fact that, there's artificial intelligence and again, all these wonderful tools that can be used to the benefit of mankind, but if they fall into the wrong hands, then all kinds of bad stuff can happen. So you just have to hope there's going to be some form of a lot of transparency. I think is what really needed, and for sure there's going to be obscure and dark powers that try to use this technology for their own evil means, but it's up to people like us, as being part of communities like Cardano, to try and keep the balance, and that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we're really at a fork in the road here, and we can choose to go down the path of freedom and equality. And if you want to run your country a certain way, then you can do that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to run your country a different way, you can do that as well. And so we're all equal in that sense. Or we could go down the road of not having any privacy, a few people running the business or the internet, and everyone just having to really try and please the people at the top.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that it's possible for there now to be like two main tangents, right? One is going towards dictatorialism, and one is towards total transparency. And when you look at what's happening in the world, it seems to be like the creation of these two types of blocks, blocks of thought. And well, hopefully we're the good guys. So, and like you're saying, yeah, I mean, it's really a moment in time where even the next 5 or 10 years, I think it's a period in time where even the course of humanity, could be what the course of humanity might look like in the next 50 or 100 years, might be defined in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we just need to be watchful and participate because, like Charles says, don't sit on the sidelines. Pick up a shovel and get busy.
Well, on that note, how can people get busy helping you and the work that you're doing?
Well, the work that I'm doing is kind of big words just to say the work that I'm doing. Like I said, the one thing that we are doing is we're presenting projects that are building on Cardano. They're the ones doing the work. We're just trying to to showcase that. So if anybody's interested in a medium, in a place where they can check people that are building on Cardano, they're welcome to check out the podcast, the Cardano Hotel podcast. Also, actually considering trying to do it in many more languages. So I would love the podcast become one of many places which could be like an epicenter for like all the things that are happening in the community. So if there's anybody out there that would like to do a podcast, let's say in Japanese or Portuguese or any other language that that might be interesting, then feel welcome to contact, and because I would love to expand on the information that we're providing.
Portuguese would be a great one for the Brazil community as well.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Alfred, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're busy running the hotel, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work that you've done. Thank you so much for being so open and genuine. And yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. And to anyone that's made it around this far, like the video if you like the content. I think Alfred was extremely open and honest today and sharing some amazing stories. So Alfred, thank you again so much for being part of Cardano.
It was great to meet you again, Reagan, and thank you for having me.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody. Bye.